I'm Indra, and I'd like to welcome you to the Messy Middle Matters, where my friends and I explore all the twists, turns, and challenges that arise in the messy middle of work.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Messy Middle Matters. I'm talking to Jameelah today, and what we're going to be talking about is the little voice that we sometimes hear in the distance, so far away, and how important it is to make time and space and how to find that little voice, because it is such a noisy world that we're finding ourselves in, and this is so much more important than I think it was in other years that I've been alive, at least, right? So,
Yeah.
Jameelah, welcome.
Thank you so much, Indra. I'm thrilled to be on the Messy Middle Matters. Just this topic means so much to me. And so I just feeling like I'm sitting with a kindred spirit. So excited to be here.
Yeah. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah.
And tell us about you, your messy middle, and what's going on now.
Oh man, lots of messiness, lots of evolution, which is all good. But I'm the founder of Unpopular Decisions. It's a media and community platform centered on the moments where we choose courage over conformity. And so it's all about the types of big, hairy life decisions where we have to go against the grain and kind of fight through the doubt. So I think this is a wonderful moment for me. I'm stepping into my entrepreneurial journey after having been on Wall Street and in tech for, almost 2 decades.
Yeah.
So just really learning how to show up in the world in a whole different way.
Yeah. And I love the fact that we're having this conversation now, because when you're faced with those big unpopular decisions, it's that little voice you've got to lean on. She's the one, he's the one, they're the one that is the one that's pointing you toward your North Star. And it's your own North Star, not someone else's.
Right. And that's the hard part is we're kind of taught so much to prioritize the voices or the needs of others, our responsibility to our teams, to family, to community, which are all incredibly important. And this is not about completely becoming a misanthrope or an isolationist, but it is about the fact that even in that space, it's still our responsibility to build a life that we love and that we can really thrive within. And that's actually the best way that you can serve your family and your community is really being your true self and taking care of yourself by having that alignment.
Yeah. And so let's talk about the noise. Let's talk about the noise and all the identities and all the costumes that you put on to fit into all the environments. There's there's the corporate self that I was thinking of, like, putting on this outfit for being my corporate self, or there's the sibling self, or the child self, or the I'm commuting in New York self, or I'm trying to navigate this really loud world that we're finding ourselves in, which is it's loud physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, every level. It's just so loud, and in these really loud environments, it's so hard. It is so hard to hear the little voice through all the noise.
Yeah, well, I do love the commuting through New York identity. Like, I just put on like the best music that gives me so much confidence, and you're walking down the street. So that one's a really fun one.
It is a fun one. It's got its own playlist.
Yeah, its own playlist, 100%. But, more broadly, this idea of identities is so important to be able to listen to your inner voice, because your inner voice is really the through line that kind of ties all of these choices that you've made, that all of these identities that you hold together. And it's actually been resonating with me so much. I recently was writing about my own experience of helping my mom clear out her garage.
Oh,
She's
cool.
moving to Florida, as moms do.
Mm-hmm.
And we found old photos of myself from when I was 7, 8 years old. And it just struck me that I had recently done a photo shoot for my new business. And like, you could put some of these poses side by side with
Really?
each other.
Oh,
Like,
that's so fun.
it was so funny to see how my true self has just always been there, and it's shown up in these different iterations. Now I have more makeup and I have like maybe more loud clothing, but it's still the same person. And so I think those moments where your inner voice is trying to speak up and is tuning into, you know, who it's trying to guide you to become, oftentimes it's trying to guide you to really
Mm,
return to yourself, reclaim an identity that maybe through responsibility and adulthood and,
yeah.
you know, corporate life, whatever it is that you kind of shed in order to fit in order to put on the mask that you had to.
Yes.
So I think it's so important to tune in because that's really trying to guide you back home to yourself.
Okay. So many things are firing in my brain right now. The two things that I'm holding at the same time, or two loudest things I'm holding at the same time right now. One is how do you make space for that inner voice? But the other part is for me, the thing that has been the most useful, at least in the recent years, has been play. Figuring out how to visit play, and specifically my gateway back into trying to figure out who I am or who I've always been
Exactly.
is like I've been friendship braceleting, I've been friendship pinning, I've been like
Yeah.
all of these like I think back to like what it was like doing in summer camp, right? Like because like that was like you were just creating crafts, right? Like I'm like hardcore arts and crafts in these random like tiny little moments. Like and for me, when you're talking about like seeing your younger self, your 7, 8 year old
Hmm.
self, right? How do you find that girl again, right? How do you find that young spirit again, the one that's always been there, that quiet voice that's on the inside that is your most authentic self?
Oh my god, exactly that feeling of going back and playing like you would
Yeah.
when you were a child. You were unfiltered, you were loud, you were expressive. It's such an important part of this journey. Of course, there's the wonderful book, The Artist's Way, which also
Mm.
talks a lot about cultivating play as a way to reconnect to your creativity and to your inner spirit. But it's so funny. This also reminds me several years ago when I was also at another career inflection point. I went
You've
to
had
an
more than one? What?
oh, so I went to an adult summer camp. It's literally like you were talking about summer camp, and we go to the Berkshires and like Connecticut, Massachusetts, and literally it's zip lining. It's like the big like inflatable things on the lake. It's
Yeah. Playing with the
all of those
parachute, maybe?
games. Yep, yep. So I talk about like literally
Yeah.
finding ways to put yourself back into those situations.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just such a awakening, such a revisiting
Yeah.
that was really powerful and just gave me a lot of permission
Yeah.
to let it be messy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are other ways like
Mhm.
that you create the space to let the voice come through? Like, do you have a practice that you do that?
Mhm.
Does she show up in, and I'm assuming she's a she, but you can tell me if it's like, something else. But does the voice come through like while you're on the subway? What,
Mhm.
like, how do you tap into that little voice?
Well, of course, it's different for everybody, but
Yeah.
for me, I find that the moments of lightning bulbs going off and inspiration
Yeah.
often happen when I'm out interacting with the world.
Mm.
When I'm reading something, I see a quote, I hear someone mention something in a conversation, I'm watching even television. There are just moments where certain words kind of strike you, and the meaning you make of those words, to me, is really your inner voice trying to come out, and it's using the language of the world around you to like really communicate something important in
Hmm.
that moment. And so, yeah, I just have all kinds of examples of these kind of situations. And more recently for me, I was watching Abbott Elementary.
Hmm.
Great show. If people haven't watched it yet, you should. And it's just great comedic relief, good 30-minute sitcom.
And
Everyone needs
smart
that.
and
It's
super
smart.
smart.
It's heartwarming. We love it. But Mr. Johnson, he's often the comedic character, but really an unexpected philosopher. He is someone who really lives his life boldly.
Yeah.
And Janine, who's the main character, is very earnest. She cares a lot. She's very enthusiastic, but she worries that she's not doing the right thing.
Hmm.
So she asks him, like, how do you live so free?
Yeah.
And he said, for me, I've always feared regret more than consequences. And that phrase stopped me in my tracks. I realized, like, have I been taught to fear the wrong thing? Like, I've been fearing consequences.
Mm-hmm.
At the moment I was trying to decide what my path ahead would be career-wise, and do I continue down the path that I was on, or do I give myself the opportunity to explore something different, take a break, really get away from the burnout path that I felt like I was walking down.
Yeah.
And all I was thinking about was the consequences. What if I don't find another job? How can I swing this financially? What will people think? But when I reframed it to, instead of can I deal with the consequences of leaving, can I actually deal with the regret of staying
Yeah.
and not giving myself the opportunity to explore something different, it completely changed the calculus for me.
Okay. So what's coming to mind is like the visual image is the movie Inside Out and
Uh-huh.
all the different little voices in your head, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's the voice that's your true self, right? That is your North Star, that is your compass, that is your guiding force to getting to be the person that you ultimately were put on this earth to be, right?
Right.
So like maybe a little too whatever. I'm just gonna go with it. I'm gonna lean into this. And then there's the like, are you sure? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's the you shoulds. You should do this and you should do that and you should. I actually have a sticker. I have to give it to you before you leave. Stop
I love it.
shoulding me.
Okay, I
Because
love
I got
that.
frustrated where people were telling me what I should be doing. I'm like, you stop shitting me. I've got enough voices. I don't need yours too,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's finding this. It's understanding which voice to listen to.
Right.
And what you talked about was the listening to the not regrets. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather try.
Yeah.
Rather try.
Yeah. Well, it's still hard to parse out all those different voices because we get really good at like convincing ourselves not to do
What?
things. Our brains are really powerful.
They're
That.
protecting us. I mean,
Yeah.
we think about there's thousands and thousands and thousands of years of iteration that goes into our brain
Mm-hmm.
that's protecting us
Yeah.
from the tiger, from the bear, from the whatever. Yeah.
Right, right. Well, it reminds me actually another moment of inspiration. A leadership coach, she's of Mindful MBA, Shannon Demko. She recently told me that the difference between kind of the fear voice versus the inner voice is that the inner voice is quick.
Mm.
Yes, no. Hell yes, hell no. Right, left,
Yeah.
right, wrong. Those are very quick answers.
Mm.
But the fear voice does a lot of overthinking, rationalizing,
Oh, interesting.
long soliloquies that kind of, well, have you thought about this? Are you sure? Like, this could go wrong in this way, and this way, and this way. And you find that train of thought going on and on and on. That's usually your brain going into overtime to like protect you, to your point.
Sure.
And yeah, really tuning into the inner voice. I think there was also an article like years ago, I think his blog, I forget what it's called, but he said, listen to the hell yes.
Mm.
And yeah, we could maybe link that in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
But he said, listen to the hell yes. Like,
Mm.
and so many things were like, maybe.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine actually just the other day,
Mm-hmm.
and it's also listening to what your body says.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I think that immediate yes, no, that doesn't come from the brain. That comes from the body is like bought into like, oh yeah, we're doing that. And like, and your brain's like, wait, hold on, we're doing that. Okay, cool. Right.
Right.
Because it comes from the body tells us what is. I yet to read the book, but it sits on my shelf as inspiration. The body keeps the score.
Yes.
Right. Because there's so much that we just, it doesn't all happen in our brains. It doesn't all happen in our brains.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes those moments, those pivotal moments of listening to your inner voice, I don't think you know that you're doing it until you're looking in the rearview mirror.
So true.
Right? Because if I think about the things that I've done, like I take all sorts of weird steps off of a cliff, right? Like just leaps of faith. I'm like, sometimes they're huge. Like the first big one that I remember is when I decided I was going to be a massage therapist, which nobody understood why I was doing it.
I love
Did
it.
it, loved it, left it for good reasons, but I don't regret it. But I was like, where did that come from? Right. But I don't regret that decision one bit. But these I didn't recognize it as being as pivotal to who I am today until I was looking back at it in my rearview mirror, right? It
Yeah.
was one of my like, what are you doing? Like, what? Like, what? What, Indra? What are you doing? What are you doing right now?
Yeah. Well, that reminds me, like, I had a reflection the other day of just how much easier it was to listen to our intuition when earlier in our careers and like earlier in life. But
Mm.
similarly, I have plenty of those types of stories too, where it was just like a flash idea. And like a week later, I was doing it. I signed up for the course. I da da da. Da. And I'm like, man, did I just used to move fast? Like, and to your point, in retrospect, I'm like, I'm so glad I did that. I was really pulled by that through line of my inner voice and my inner identity. And, but I'm finding as I'm getting older, more responsibilities, more identities I'm attached to
Oh,
now.
interesting.
I'm attached to the idea of being on this corporate ladder. I'm attached to the neighborhood I live in and maybe what that says about me, right? So now that moment of inspiration gets immediately followed by all the reasons why it's going to be too hard to follow or it's too disruptive to
Yeah.
everything else I've got going on. Yeah, so I just feel like it's so important to kind of really go back to, like we talked about, go back to those times when you were just really unfiltered, listening to your intuition and say, okay, what was it about that moment that gave me the ability to like move so quickly and move so confidently in that new direction? And kind of maybe figure out if there's pieces of what's built up around you since then that you can shed.
A phrase that's coming to mind has showed up a lot this week is how comfort and safety are not couples,
Mm,
right? What feels safe, sometimes not safe. That like the when people ask me what do you mean by that, I usually talk about the frog being boiled example.
mm,
That frog is having a great time in a hot tub until it's too late and it's cooked,
right.
right? So like comfort was not safe for the frog.
Mm,
And I think that we lean into because life gets so complex and we collect all these experiences that inform who we are. Really, oh, let me go for the safe thing. Let me go for the comfortable thing. Let me or what's perceived as safe.
right.
And we're just trying to survive. And so, like, if
Mm-hmm.
somebody hasn't listened to their voice, I don't want them to think that they're bad. There's no moral judgment here.
Totally.
That's totally fine because there's different seasons of your life where you need different things. But just I think that as you get older, the comfort starts to not be safe anymore again, which
Mm-hmm.
is kind of why we do a loop again. We're like kind of looping back to like, hold
Yep.
on, when did I feel in flow as a human, not in like a craft of the things that I do or, my hobbies or whatever it might be, but in flow with who I am, in alignment with who I am. And that's where, that second chapter or whatever chapter, but that new chapter can
Mm-hmm.
start for you again.
Well, I love this rebrand of the midlife crisis.
It's not a crisis. We can discuss that too,
Yeah.
but keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, no, no. But in exactly the sense of what you're saying, like there comes a point where you have kind of built up a bunch of aspects of your life to the point where hopefully you did get a little bit more
Yeah.
comfortable. And there is that moment where the comfort starts to feel misaligned.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, what if that is actually quote unquote what people call the midlife crisis? It's actually the moment where you say, I've gotten too comfortable.
Yeah.
And I need to rediscover, myself, rediscover meaning, reconnect to purpose. So don't everyone go buy a red sports car. That's not what I'm talking about, but that could be authentic choice.
Maybe, but I think that the difference between like the midlife crisis of the 80s and 90s
Yeah.
is it was a blatant disregard for what
Mm,
anyone else, like how my actions impacted anyone else. When I'm buying that
right.
red sports car, and I don't care about my family and how it's going to impact our finances,
Right.
that's a crisis.
Yes.
I think that there is there's an acknowledgement and a pivot and I'll dare to say rebirth. I can't think of a better phrase, but there's
Mm-hmm.
a reigniting
Right.
and reunification
Right.
to self. That's very different. And I think they time themselves at the same place. And I happened to be talking to somebody about this, like a similar topic. And I said, yeah, I guess people used to call it a midlife crisis, but I don't feel like that phrase fits anymore.
Right.
And the person said to me, they're like, oh, and it needs to be clear. It was a cis white man who was roughly my age. And he said to me, he goes, oh, no, only men have midlife crises. Women figure stuff out. And I was like, okay, cool.
I like that rebrand.
I'm like, I can't disagree with you.
Exactly.
And I'm like, that, I mean, I don't know if I would have said that out loud, but you saying that out loud,
right.
I will take that.
Exactly. We will endorse.
I will, sign that one. But because I think it's different. I think it's different. And I think that the other thing is that the expectations of the societal expectations are different too. But if you think about what, like the boomer generation, the expectations, I still remember my mother telling me, like, once you turn 30, you can't have long hair. Like there, as one example. And then the reason I'm sharing that one is the Golden Girls. There was that whole meme, like, I don't know how 5-10 years ago, where people were putting on different hairstyles on the Golden Girls. They were 50.
Yeah.
They were 50 on the show, right? And that is not what 50 looks like today.
Right.
And people figure out it's the hairstyles.
Right.
Like, just change the hairstyles.
Yeah.
You didn't get stuck into like, I need to have the short hair because that's what we do at that age, right?
Well, it's also really important what you're kind of pointing to is just the fact that depending on your intersecting identities, your kind of permission structure in a way to maybe, access your inner voice and just do kind of things that are in alignment, it can be curtailed because you're constantly filtering what that inner voice is saying through, like I said earlier, the responsibility that you feel to your family, responsibility you feel to your community, responsibility you feel to represent your others who share your identities in a way that, you would feel proud of. Like, I definitely have felt this pressure as a Black woman in corporate America. There's kind of a measure of this is maybe what I want to do, but I'm also filtering it through the lens of, okay, well, how will this represent? How will this ultimately showcase what Black women are capable of and being that beacon maybe for others who want to join my industry eventually. So when you put those additional kind of lenses and filters on, it can create a distance between you and your inner voice. And so I've been actually really disheartened, but I shouldn't have been surprised, but positively surprised by how many people that I've met through building Unpopular Decisions, through, working and meeting the community that you've built around Messy Middle as well. How many people are women, eldest daughters, members of a diaspora? Like, we can go on about the identity, LGBT, like all the different identities, because I do think leaving space for the imperfect journey is especially hard in those spaces because we're always taught to be twice as good. And so this is why these conversations are so important.
I'm glad that you brought in intersectionality because I think that all of us need to be aware of it for different reasons, because one person's journey can't be someone else's for so many reasons in general. But this specifically, because not all of us have permission, I'll say, or the latitude, maybe that's a more gracious term. Not all of us have the latitude to walk in this world with reckless abandon, right? And when you're in that scenario, maybe honoring your inner voice can happen in small ways. It can happen privately. It can happen it doesn't have to be big, bold, sports car brodation, brash kind of things, or like I'm quitting my job. Like when I left my job the most recent time, I said to me, I did to save myself. And number one. Number two, I recognize my privilege. I'm like, not everyone has this privilege. This is such a privilege, and so be gracious with yourself when you do or don't listen to your inner voice, and be gracious with others when they do or don't. You can't should someone else and how they should do it. You have no idea. You have no idea what they're living with. Especially, you have no idea what identities they have because it's not always visible.
Right.
right? So thank you for bringing that in.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I would add is also on top of being gracious with others, also recognizing that you listening to your own inner voice and showing that example
Mm-hmm.
is also a part of representation. And I, was feeling a lot of guilt, leaving my last opportunity as well. I loved my team. They're phenomenal people. And I was just like, actually, one of the best things I could do is showcase to them what it looks like when somebody is choosing to live in alignment, choosing to be audacious, choosing to listen to their inner voice. And that's actually the gift and the representation that I can give to my team and to others that I cared about a lot.
That's really big.
Mhm.
That's really big. That feels like a really good pausing point for our
Yeah.
conversation. Anything else that you want to add or anything you want to share, how people can find you or any of those things?
Yeah. Well, a lot of what I shared here is really the kind of impetus and purpose behind what I'm building now with
Mhm.
Unpopular Decisions. So if people do want to follow and hear kind of more of these
When
conversations,
people, not if.
when we're interviewing everyday people like you, me, Indra, like about their experiences of choosing differently. And so they can find us on Instagram, Unpopular Decisions Pod. They can find us on Substack at Unpopular Decisions. And of course, you can find me on LinkedIn, Jameelah Calhoun.
Okay. And I will make sure that all the notes are in the show notes. So all the links to all the things.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining me. I know that people will feel seen, heard, will have learned something from this. So I hope you join us next time for another topic from the messy middle. Bye, everyone. Thanks for taking time with us in the messy middle. Word of mouth remains the most powerful way for people to find us. If this episode sparked something for you, we'd love it if you'd subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app, download a few episodes, and share it with someone else who's navigating the in-between. Do you have ideas for future episodes or topics you'd like us to explore? You can find our feedback form at themessymiddlematters.com or in the show notes. Thank you for joining us on this journey. This work is better when we do it together. Until next time.